Hi, this is Mike making my video. It's 3 o'clock a.m. and it's 11/7/2025. Uh, basically, I'm talking about manifestation, enlightenment, uh, the dark night of the soul, uh, just basically fancy words for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Um, I've got schizoaffective bipolar type, and they say that schizoaffective is actually doesn't necessarily mean schizophrenia. It's more on the lines of like a bipolar disorder, but you have psychotic features. Uh, so anyway, uh, psychosis basically is the shedding off of the old mask, the old programs, the old self, shaking off the old self and put on the new self, like a new garment, basically. And during that phase, of shedding the old self, uh, you find the new self, and then the new self is basically more or less, uh, a very highly tuned instrument that you're using your mind. And it's both sides of your mind instead of just one side. It's not so much just your ego saying, me, I, I want, you know. Instead of that, you start using the other side of your mind where it's more interested in creativity and giving and creating things, you know. So, the ego, is more or less on the lines of destroying things. And the subconscious mind, the servant, is more or less on the lines of creating things. So when you shake off your old self, you find your new self, which has been with you all along. Uh, works in tandem with the ego, the creative mind, or the executive functions of the mind. But the heart, it has to do with the servant. So, you have those two working together, they're in accordance with each other. And when they work together, you can move mountains. And you'll find that, when you shake off the old self, you know, when you renounce the world and you destroy that old man, you basically get that powerful ruler and you destroy him and kill the king. And when you annihilate the ego, what happens is your creative mind takes over and you start showing an interest in, like classical music and, like art. You start drawing interesting artwork, really good artwork, and then you become an empath. And, you know, uh, you start, like I say, your taste in music changes, uh, your taste in art changes, your interests change, and then you find out that you have a bunch of new interests. So, anyway, along with that, you have an epiphany usually it's accompanied with. That's your manifestation, and it's a miracle. And the windows of heaven open up and they give you a blessing so big you can't contain it. So, basically, what happens is, after you exhaust all your possibilities and you use all your energy and you exhaust everything you get to the point where you're completely depleted and you're empty and void and blank, and that's like the dark night of the soul. And then what happens is you eventually recover from that. And sometimes, if there wasn't an intervention, you would be completely wasted and probably destroyed. So, thank God for that. But, really what it is, your mind is actually producing creativity and epiphanies, and you're having miracles happen, and manifestations happen as well. But, when you're at a point in time when you renounce the world and you basically have nothing and you know nothing, you give up on all your previous degrees and knowledge, and you start having all these austerities that you deal with, and you start sacrificing, and you give up on women, you give up on wealth, you give up all your money, so you own nothing, you possess nothing, you know nothing, and basically you become nothing, and you lower yourself and you humble yourself. So you know nothing, you possess nothing, and uh, you let go of your ego, and you are nothing. So when all that stuff happens, your mind actually kicks in. The DMT reserves that you have in your mind kick in. You have a lot of energy, and that energy is what manifests miracles and manifestations as far as wealth and all that stuff comes later. But usually what happens is major miracles will take place, and they'll completely blow your mind, and then they satisfy the lack that you have and the lack of knowledge, for instance. uh, and then anyway, those types of things happen, and you're so overwhelmed with that, and then of course, uh, you keep going, and then you get to the point where you're completely wasted, and you're drained, and you're emptied, like a you're poured out like a drink offering, and so anyway, with that being said, you slowly recoup and you regain your bearings, and then it might take a year, to get better, to get back on track. But you end up losing your job, you lose your money, you lose your wealth, uh, you lose your friends, you lose your family, and like I say, you lose your possessions, and you trade one set of circumstances in for another, and you have a new life, and basically you have a whole new set of things that you look at and you understand, and a lot of times the newer life, well, more often than not, the newer life is actually a better one. And there's things that I used to have that were a mystery to me, and I was always wondering about creation, and I was always wondering about the way things are, the way things how they work, and then I got to the point where I found out that the human mind, the human psyche, is incredibly powerful, and I can move mountains with that. I can destroy buildings, create life forms, and I understand the way things truly work. And I was into animism. I understand that all things have a life form, even like my truck. It thinks to some degree, and even some of the most inanimate things you can imagine could be a two-dimensional drawing, can come to life, and that's where you have to have the mind of a child. The creativity of a child, the acceptance of a child, the innocence of a child, the openness of a child. And then when you do all that, uh, you find out that uh, the world that's around you is actually a very interesting place, a very beautiful place, and you know, but you really have to go through that as a trial by fire, and you go through that and you experience all that stuff, and you get to the point where there's nothing that ceases to amaze me anymore. Uh, I mean, it's all miraculous, and you got to believe in the whole idea that all things are possible, and you got to believe in infinite possibilities in every action, pure potential, and you got to believe in sacrifice. You have to sacrifice. You have to give up everything, all or nothing, and you wouldn't believe how much you have to give up sometimes, but when you give it all up and you get to the point where you do that, then you experience some of the greatest epiphanies that you could imagine. And of course, I've seen some wild things. And, I met God and talked to him. He's a man just like anybody else. He was about 7 foot tall, and he was huge, about 600 pounds. And, well, I don't know, 400 pounds, probably 500. But anyway, he's a real big guy, and he had white hair and blue eyes. And his head was about 5 times the size of mine. He was just huge. And anyway, I talked to him. He was real friendly, and I know how he is and how he acts and everything. So you give up on women and wine. You give up on wealth. You give up on knowledge. Trying to acquire all this knowledge, it just you can know something conceptually, but until you truly experience it, then you'll know that what you were going on about, basically you find out that you were completely wrong, and the real true nature of things, is far different in size and scope than what you had previously thought. But you have to understand something conceptually, and it has to kind of click with you. And then, of course, the universe will give you a lesson, and it'll show you a miracle and answer all those problems, all those deficits that you have in your thought process. So, anyway, yeah, I've gotten almost everything I wanted in life, and more. I have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experiences, a lot of a lot of people I have come to know, a lot of women, a lot of things. I've got kids, I got grandkids, and I was married, divorced, and I've seen every type of miracle you could imagine. So I believe in reincarnation. I've seen the afterlife, and I know that if God resides in heaven and He resided in a building that I went to and stuff, a place, a hospital. I mean, we are in heaven, and I guess that's the simplest way of stating it. And even like the afterlife, I've seen that. And I know that, what it is, it's probably just a conjuration of your mind, a lucid dream. And that's what this is a hallucination. Your mind creates a hallucination, and that's really all this is. Just a simulation. It's a conjuration of your mind, heaven and hell. They both exist, and they're both fake, and they're computer generated, and I'm computer generated. Everything is. So anyway, that's all I got to say. Over and out.